how much do you really need to retire in Canada? In this video, we'll talk about retirement planning and common rules of thumb that we hear, and all the factors that you should consider when you are planning for retirement, and that's gonna apply whether you're decades away or months away from your own financial independence. Hey, I'm Hervin Pesa. I'm a financial planner, but just like you, I'm still on this journey to building wealth and financial independence. This is video 1 of 30 for our back to school, back to basics in investing and personal finance. In this channel, we aim to provide you with the money lessons you never got taught in school. To sprint towards this mission, we're publishing a video every single day in September. So be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss any of the lessons. I published this video first because it'll touch on so many topics and acronyms that we'll do individual lessons on throughout the month. I also like starting with the end in mind. So if you stay tuned and watch all the upcoming lessons, you'll have a better understanding of all the facets that we talked about here in personal finance, which ties into retirement planning and your overall financial plan. So just how much do you really need to retire? Is it 250,000, 500, a million, 2? Well, of course, this all depends on you. Your retirement is unique. I'm here all week, folks. There are popular rules of thumbs like the 4% rule, the 25x rule, and they serve as great starting points for quick napkin math, but I think they fall short. It all depends on your own circumstances, your own goals, your lifestyle, and even your health. In this video, we'll go over key considerations that change your personal retirement number, and most of them you can actually control. So these factors are like what you're planning to spend, your other sources of income in retirement, when you're planning to retire, your personal life expectancy depending on your health history. This tells us how long we need to sustain your retirement income for. Inflation. This tells us how much you'll increase your spending every year. And the rate of return your investments will earn in retirement and before retirement will also impact your decisions. Finally, how much do you intend to leave behind as an estate or your legacy? I bet you didn't think about that, but that impacts your retirement plan. See, you can't really control your mortality, inflation, and market performance, but you can control the rest of these other factors. If you can take one thing away from this video, it's that you are not powerless.
Yes, please. You have the power.
The issue is most investors and savers dwell on market returns when there are other factors they have complete domain over. For each of these factors, I'll talk about examples and hypothetical changes so you can see how it helps answer the question, how much? In tomorrow's video, we'll do case studies which will put these factors into practice, and that should help you understand just how impactful these factors can be. So the first factor is what kind of lifestyle do you aspire to have when you retire, and how much does that cost? For those who are less than 10 years away from retirement, even 5 years away from retirement, this might be easier to answer, but this is much more complex for the 30-year-olds and hopefully the 20-year-olds that are watching a video like this. If you are, hit that like button because you are so far ahead. So for those that don't have an idea what their lifestyle is gonna be like, for that you can use a rule of thumb. But we have to use the B word to make this happen. Budget. For most of us, retirement spending will likely be less than what we are earning and spending while we're working. See, it's impossible unless you win the lottery.
Can I tell you what? Do you know your chances of winning?
Slim to none.
To live on a $50,000 income right now and expect to retire with $1 million lifestyle. With the exception of key events and key projects such as a world tour or RVing across North America, your expenses are probably gonna go down in retirement. But let's go back to the B word first. However, you can relax. If you don't have one, we'll do a video talking about a strategic spending plan later. But for now, let's use a safe assumption of a 70% of your current spending. I'll assume that most of you don't have a spending strategy yet, so I'll keep this simple. You can look at your debit statements over the last 3 months and see what came out of your bank accounts. If you have credit cards that you don't clear off every month, you need to add every purchase you made using credit. Take the average of this, and that should serve as your rough estimate for how much your monthly spending is. Then multiply that by 70%. You have to do this exercise as a household though, so make sure you're speaking with your spouse when you try to get a gauge for this. This will then serve as your interim retirement income target. So it's temporary until you create a customized solution. If you found that you spend about $5,000 every month, your monthly target should be about $3,500 a month in retirement. But let's not forget taxes, since that $3,500 is after tax. You get to spend that after the CRA has taken their share. Let's assume then a 20% tax rate. This will bring up your income target to $4,375. Now we can work with a base number. Again, that's probably inaccurate, but it'll allow us to move forward. Next, let's figure out the alternative sources of income that you may have. Maybe you work for a company that provides a defined benefit pension plan, or you intend to keep working part-time in retirement. Maybe you can even draw from a rental property or dividends from a business that you own. One of the perks of being a Canadian though is having access to government pensions such as the Old Age Security and the Canada Pension Plan, which usually kick in at 65. Both of these are indexed to inflation, which is fantastic. In 2021, the CPP maximum at the time of this recording is about $1,203, but the average payout was just over $700 in 2020. On the other hand, the OAS caps out at about $626, but the average payout was just $580. So let's use a $1,200 figure as our pension number. If you are married, your net income requirement after taking off the $2,400, your income gap, the amount that you must draw from your own savings and investments, is $1,975. Now let's apply this number with a rule of thumb. The 4% rule. Your retirement nest egg must produce $23,700 in this example. Again, if you anticipate any other sources of income, like your rental properties or continuing part-time work, that would reduce your income gap, and that would reduce what you need to draw from your investment pools. But for the rest of this example, we'll assume that there's nothing else aside from CPP and OAS. If we use the 4% rule, you'll divide $23,700 by 0.04, which gives you $592,500. Using the 25x rule, 23,700 times 25 gives you the exact same number. Surprise, that's because these rules are related. If you don't know what they are, don't worry, I have a standalone video for these dedicated to those, along with detailed breakdowns of the tax system, the basics of CPP, OAS, and we'll even do a video about your strategic spending plan, aka your budget. So sit tight. Now, I have a high respect for Bill Bengen, and he's the originator of the 4% rule. I see a major flaw in using this shortcut. This assumes a fixed spending amount inflated to perpetuity, or as long as they're alive. But we are not econs or spreadsheets. We don't live a linear life. Retirement can typically be broken down into 3 stages. They call it the go-go, the slow-go, and the no-go years. Essentially, your spending goes down. Your highest spending years are usually the first 5 to 10 years, and this drops after about the 10-year mark, or when you get to 75 or 80 years old. There's further reduction to this when you really stop moving around. The initial retirement stage is usually the most expensive because I call this deferred living. Think of all the things that you said you will not do right now and you'll do it in retirement. Really, retirees are excited to travel and do the projects they postponed while working. So barring any extreme health conditions, the later stages typically require the least cash flow. Based on the clients I've met, this holds true. This paper by Cecira Uzuri and Brian Beach, Ben Franklin, and Matthew Jones analyzed spending trends in retirees at the UK. It shows that this assumption kind of holds true globally. This means that retirement spending is not linear, which leads us to believe that you might actually need less in your retirement savings than most people assume. That's because you can expect expect retirement to be front-loaded. One of the great things I like about the 4% rule is it already factors in inflation. And inflation really is important. Inflation is how prices of the goods and services we consume tend to go up over time. The reason why this will complicate your retirement plan is twofold. One, not all of your sources of income are inflation protected. So CPP and OAS are. If you own real estate, for the most part, rents typically move with inflation. This means that you'll receive higher income from your rental properties as years go by. But on the other hand, you will have to increase your personal withdrawals from your retirement nest egg every year to catch up to the increasing price. On the other side of this, depending on your lifestyle, some of the things you plan to spend money on may increase in price faster than inflation, while some will be slower. So it's really tough to get a great gauge on this. Watch this video here. I already did a deep dive in inflation and I'll add it to the playlist. Look at the description. Let's go back to the 4% rule. Whenever I hear that being explained, the pre-funding explanation, the issue that I see is that they forget about inflating the expense for how far away retirement is going to be. See, the $23,700 that we talked about today was in today's dollars. We still need to inflate that to the dollar equivalent amount when you retire. This is what is often missed when I hear discussions about the 4% rule. So if you're 30 years away from retirement, assuming a 2% inflation, this is actually an equivalent income gap of $42,900, making the target nest egg significantly larger at $1.1 million. Someone who's retiring this year or a few years away will have a smaller nest egg target compared to those that are 2 or 3 decades away. So keep that in mind whenever you hear these things. That just shows you how important understanding how much time you have before retirement can be. With that said, let's move on to the next two factors, which is retirement age and your life expectancy, which jointly tells us just how long you're planning to stay retired for. This is important because the longer you're retired for, the longer you'll need to rely on your investments and your cash savings to sustain your lifestyle. Let's start with life expectancy because it's slightly easier. You can use these statistics as a guide, and I'll also link them below. However, in my practice, I typically use an age 90 plan as a termination date. And we run a secondary plan showing age 100 to further test plan viability. This is because we're collectively living longer and longer. And if you're in a couple, you should use the year that the younger one of you hits 90 years old. Now, the next thing is your retirement date or your retirement age. If you're in a couple, ask this question. Do you plan to retire at the same time? Maybe you're in a situation where a partner wants to work for longer. Maybe they're waiting for a pension to kick in. Or maybe you just find your job really fun and you can't imagine yourself quitting. In any case, this is probably hard to picture if you're in your 30s, but you'll get there. If you retire early, you will have to add a few years in your retirement plan that you need to fund for. This is because the earliest you can receive your CPP benefits is 60. Retiring earlier than that means you'll likely fully fund your retirement from your own savings during the early years. If we go back to the 3-stage retirement planning, this actually creates a 4th stage preceding the government benefits. CPP might be available at 60, but OAS can't be taken early at all. Taking CPP early also means reducing one of your inflation protected sources of income for the rest of your life. So this must be considered carefully. When we work with clients, we quantify the net benefit of taking the CPP early or delaying it. To keep the rest of this video simple, we'll suppose that you intend to retire at 65 and you'll take CPP and OAS at that point. Retiring early also adds another challenge aside from higher capital requirements. You also have less time to save and invest, thereby reducing your ability to compound your returns, so you're gonna have to save more of your own cash to grow it. Speaking of compounding and growth, now we have to talk about rates of return. We'll briefly talk about post-retirement return and pre-retirement returns. See, a common dogma states that the closer you get to retirement, the more conservative your portfolio or your investments need to be, and this is still true to a certain extent. See, losses early in your retirement will have a deeper impact in your retirement plan compared to losses suffered later in your retirement. Even if you could theoretically receive the same average return, this is known known as sequence of return risk. Retiring in a market condition similar to the 60s and 70s is super painful compared to retiring in 2010. But what people think of when they hear, I want to retire and I want to transition into a safer investment, is getting rid of stocks and buying bonds. However, because of lower interest rates and longer life expectancies, a heavy tilt towards fixed income assets such as bonds without careful consideration can jeopardize your portfolio's ability to beat inflation. So the fact is, you cannot stop participating in market-based returns simply because you're retired, unless you have significantly more cash than you need to live. As far as the actual returns go, if you are still comfortable with the risk and volatility that comes with your portfolio, let's say you can get 5% or 6%, at that point, you'll need less in your portfolio compared to somebody whose investments can only bring them in 3 or 4%. Let's say you're turning 65 this year. After considering your other sources of income, your lifestyle, and your other needs, you figured out that you need to generate about $2,000 every month from your portfolio, or $24,000 every year. You expect to have this income inflation protected until 90. Assuming your portfolio earns 5%, and an average inflation of 2%, you will need to have $424,000 in your portfolio before you retire to maintain this lifestyle for 25 years. If you earn 4% on the other hand and inflation stays at 2%, you will need to have $472,000 to produce the same income, inflation adjusted, until you're 90 years old. At 3%, $528,000. So you can see, the more conservative your portfolio is, the more aggressive you have to be at saving your money. The last factor before we get into our examples is your estate or your legacy plans. A common thing you could hear is, bro, I am investing in dividend stocks only. I want to have enough stocks so that the dividend yield covers my whole income. It's all about the passive lifestyle, man. You know what? This belief in dividend investing has worked for many investors, not simply because of the dividends, but a company that pays dividends consistently is probably performing well, thereby increasing the odds of higher returns. But that's not the bone that I have to pick with this. This presupposes capital preservation. This assumes that you have no intention of touching your asset base. This will mean a significantly higher capital requirement compared to somebody who is okay to draw down their capital. Please remember this. You are allowed to touch the capital when you retire. I've heard plenty of stories where kids receive inheritances from their parents who lived meagerly in order to give them some sort of gift for their estate. But I've heard in more than one occasion kids saying, I wish my mom or my dad or my grandpa just spent it on themselves. See, if you have a set amount you want to leave for your kids, your grandkids, or a charity of choice, you will need to set a higher retirement capital amount. However, please remember, having a plan further ahead makes it easier instead of feeling like I have to scrimp and save every dollar that I have because I want to leave a gift without quantifying what that is. See, if you wanted to leave behind $100,000 for your church, you'll factor that into your retirement plan to account for the balance you want left over from your estate, instead of blindly being cheap on yourself in retirement because you want to leave a gift of an unknown amount. Well, that's it, folks. You can see that there's so many factors that can affect the answer to the seemingly simple question. However, I hope this video gives you information you need to start heading in the right direction, at least getting you to start asking the right questions. See, I made a few broad assumptions that may or may not apply to your personal case, and even if they seem similar enough to your situation, there's still enough personal differences to warrant a professional opinion. See, I don't know you, I don't know your personal circumstances, so you cannot rely on a video like this as investment, tax, legal, or retirement advice. If you're watching something like this for research and you're sitting on the fence thinking how overwhelming this can be, You can spend a little bit of money right now on creating a plan, but more importantly, creating and starting a relationship with a pro that will walk alongside you on what could be a long and significant journey. See, the right plan can improve your wealth so much throughout your life. So work with a certified financial planner. You can book a consult with us and see what value we can bring, or you can work with somebody in your area. I want to accomplish a few things in this video. I wanted to give you an idea on how many factors and what kind of differing factors will alter the answer to this question and the subsequent actions you may need to take based on how these factors play into your life. I also wanted to give a sense of what this series should hopefully build up to. We will discuss pensions, investments, taxes, and so much more throughout the month. So don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already. And as we're building these contents and these items, we may even answer a few of your questions. So be sure to leave us a comment below and let us know how a video like this could help you. In tomorrow's video, we will put a lot of these factors into context. We'll do a case study comparing the rough math and what would it look like if we created a proper financial plan. See you tomorrow. Until then, stay aware, take control. Love y'all. Bye-bye.